We have a guest in our midst right now as we are in election season. And yesterday we queued off, we talked with Jim Cullen, a candidate for Portsmouth Sheriff. And today we have his opponent, incumbent Sheriff of Portsmouth, Michael Moore, who is in the room to talk about his candidacy for re-election. And of course, we thank you for being in here with the Sheriff. Thanks for taking the time with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Now, before we get into what you've done and your position in terms of being the Sheriff, we were just talking a little bit about your background in connection to the United Nations. You have some experience when it comes to even being in that arena within your career.
Yes, that is true.
So what was your role in the past when it came to your experiences when it comes to the United Nations?
Yeah. When I was still, prior to retiring from the Department of Justice, every year during the session when General Assembly was in session at the United Nations, we were drafted, asked, requested to assist the State Department and Secret Service while it was in session.
That's an incredible experience.
It was. I did it for 5 consecutive years. The only thing that put a stop to it was once I got promoted to supervision.
So let's talk a little bit about your professional background. You were just talking about with the DOJ within that aspect.
Yes.
What are some of the other things that you've done within your career? Because you haven't been sheriff your entire life. You've had quite the career.
Yeah, that's true. I started my law enforcement career right here in the state of Virginia as a trooper with the Virginia State Police. I started my federal law enforcement career as a special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration, commonly referred to as the DEA. The last 22 years of my federal service, I was a special agent and supervisor with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, commonly referred to as ATF. And I was a supervisor for ATF in Norfolk, Detroit, Washington, D.C., Richmond, and Charlottesville, Virginia. There were so many locations I had to.
I was going to say there was a lot of letters.
Yeah.
There was a lot of letter agencies.
A lot of alphabets involved in that. Yes.
And you're a native of Hampton Roads and went to Norfolk State University.
Yeah, graduated from Norfolk State, grew up in the Cavalier Manor section of Portsmouth, graduated from Manor High School.
And you've been in the role as Portsmouth since 2017?
Yes. First elected in 2017 and re-elected in 2021.
Okay, well, let's talk about your background. You just listed all of the alphabet agencies and their experiences. That was really neat to hear from you. I mean, I've talked to you plenty of times. You've never talked about your experiences with things like the UN. How do you think that your background helps you in your role as sheriff?
That's an excellent question. My background is heavily rooted in security. I've done everything for Department of Justice, from working in undercover operations, whether it's drug trafficking, gun trafficking, to helping to investigate the incident that happened in 1993 in Waco, Texas, the Branch Davidian compound. From there, of course, the most recent one was 9/11. We had an active role in that. At that time, I was actually a supervisor in Detroit, Michigan. But I had to supply manpower to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, as well as once flights resumed after the initial attack, I had to also supply personnel to serve as air marshals until Homeland Security, which at that time wasn't developed. It came along a few years later. So we did that on behalf of supporting post 9/11.
That is quite the experience that you had even within that particular date. And we know that 9/11 is one of those memories that's just etched in your mind. And to be within law enforcement, how does being a part of that moment, even within that context, does it shape what you do day to day? Do you think about it often?
I do, and especially during the commemorations every year. You can't help but reflect back. And that's why with me, with the deputies that I supervise, with the agents that I supervise when I was still with DOJ, training is such an important aspect of the job. And I often tell the new cadets at the sheriff's office, you can't just train physically. You have to be able to train your mind as well, for that you can address those issues, because oftentimes it's not a warning. You have to be able to react and deliver whatever the challenge is that you face at that moment. So having that experience working in a capacity as a street agent, whether it was undercover or as a supervisor supervising major events, I always resort back to that training, and it helps me day-to-day operations. Because I'll give you a prime example. Early last year, our jail, former jail, which is located on the waterfront in Portsmouth, caught fire at 2 o'clock in the morning. So it's no time to sit around and think about what you need to do. It has to be an automatic response, because you got not only inmate safety involved, but you have employees. So that building was evacuated in a matter of an hour and a half. No one was injured, and we're talking about an 8-story building. And evacuation was challenging simply because you're dealing with people that were incarcerated. You don't have one deputy for every inmate that you have. So you collectively have to work together to get everyone out safely and then still maintain that safety once they're out of that facility.
I remember when that happened. I remember reporting on that as it happened. Sheriff, you mentioned training. There's a lot of conversation, and continues and over the years, about how police officers are trained, how deputies are trained.
Right.
You've now been in your role for a number of years. Are there any ways in which you've changed how you train your staff? And what would you say are the highlights of those changes, if so?
Yeah, we have to be able to adjust to the time. Times have changed, whether it was 5 years ago to present. And one of the things that we really incorporated in the sheriff's office was de-escalation training, which is huge when you're dealing with an inmate population. Because when you have individuals coming into your care, we don't play the role of a judge or a jury. We treat everyone just like we want to be treated. And you have people coming in that we're responsible for that oftentimes are not only a harm to the staff or other inmates, but a harm to themselves. So that all goes hand in hand with being able to really have a conversation, de-escalate, and just work as a team, because that's the key thing, is teamwork.
Have you, in your conversations over de-escalation, has it adjusted over the years? Have you kind of had to adapt? I know you talk about with the times, but even the conversation on de-escalation, I feel like it's changed over the years and what that even looks like.
It has, and and this process for me started when I was still a special agent with DOJ, because one of the collateral duties I was a regional supervisor for the hostage negotiations team. So conversation was a big thing, and working with the SWAT team with DOJ, it was challenging at first, because their first thought was always, well, we're going to knock down the door and go in and secure the area. I said, well, let's try a different way. And really the hostage negotiations program came about after Waco. After Waco, Texas, that's when we really became full force into incorporating the two together, negotiations and SWAT tactics. So it eventually became very clear that we would have to change, especially after Waco, when those 4 agents were shot going through the front door of that compound. So eventually I was able to get everyone to buy into the fact, look, it's a different ways to do this. We still might have to knock down a door, but let's try a conversation first. We can easy to get phone numbers, even to make that communication element work. And so I've tried to incorporate that same thing in the sheriff's office. When you're dealing with an inmate, and oftentimes it's a person who's being arrested for the very first time, and they come into the confines of jail, personality can easily change. And it can be because simply of fear. So they become agitated. So how do we calm that person down? Years ago, not saying that ever happened at the Portsmouth Sheriff's Office before I was elected, but years ago, the response might have been handcuffing the person, challenging the person physically. That just doesn't work. Now, it's going to be times where you do have to have that physical altercation, but that's in defense of what someone is trying to do to you. But communication is key, but you have to also be ready for the physical aspect of it. So they really go hand in hand, but the key thing is to be able to identify which tactic is best for that situation, because no situation is going to be 100% identical with each case you're confronted with.
We just talking about training and de-escalation.
Yes.
You've been in the role now for 7 years?
Yep.
7 or 8 years?
Yes.
What would you say has changed for the better since you've been sheriff?
I think one of the things that has been primary, that has been key to changing, is what we just discussed. Don't be so quick to react physically than to try to de-escalate that situation. And, and it's really handy with the training that we give. The good thing for us is we have our own training academy. And our instructors are constantly going to training themselves, and they bring that training back to the academy to share with the cadets. And not only the cadets, we're required yearly for in-service training with the current staff. So it's constant training, constant reevaluation of what we need to be doing going forward.
You mentioned your background in federal law enforcement.
Yes.
A big conversation right now is how various sheriffs and local law enforcement agencies will work with federal agencies,
Right.
particularly HHS and ICE, when it comes to immigration policies. I know we did a few stories with
Yes.
you. Could you explain your position when asked the question, are you and will you cooperate with ICE officials when it comes to any kind of immigration policies at the jail?
Yeah, and we've had a policy in place for a number of years, and it has always worked. Most recently, we had one probably about 2 months ago. Was an illegal immigrant, came into our custody by the police department. We contacted ICE, and within 24 hours, that person was picked up by ICE. That person also had a criminal record, so it wasn't just that civil violation of being in the country illegally, but he had a record also. So we have a great working relationship with ICE, as well as the FBI, the DEA, the Secret Service, all agencies, and even other local police departments within the region. So we would never, ever turn down the opportunity to help someone else in law enforcement to help carry out their mission.
Is there a threshold, as I hear you mention that specific example with this individual who said, wasn't documented, but also had a criminal record?
Right.
Is it because of the combination of those things, or just is there a certain threshold for a person who is a illegal immigrant or undocumented that comes into the jail in which prompts that call, prompts that reaching out?
Well, with this particular case, that arrest was in conjunction with an illegal act. So that person wasn't picked up because they were suspected to be an illegal immigrant. A crime led into finding that out later on once they arrived at the facility.
So in terms of that, would on the opposite side of that, for basis of a person being in the country illegally, as sheriff and with your deputies and with your jail, would you cooperate with officials in that case, either housing someone or sending your deputies out to aid in that?
Well, the key for me is, as long as it's due process of the law and no one human or civil rights are violated, we'll help and work with anyone. But those are two key components for me, that I won't get engaged in any type of activity that is in violation of those two core values.
So last question I'll have just on that topic, and I appreciate you spelling this out. That's why I love this platform, because we can have these conversations and ask questions and follow-ups. But for people who don't understand, you talked about due process and the legalities of it. We had Cullen over yesterday, and we were talking through. Most people, I don't think they understand from your side of what actually is legal, what isn't legal, what counts in this case.
Right.
So can you help spell that out when you're looking at it, how something does qualify as, this was done the right way, so we'll support? What goes through your mind in looking at that, whether or not you're going to support and help?
Yeah, as long as the same process is carried out, say for an immigration arrest, that's carried out for a person that's arrested for carrying an illegal weapon, or a person involved in illegal activities selling drugs, they are afforded due process of the law. They still have to go through the court process to address the charges that they've been levied upon them. So that's all I expect, is the same progression and effort that goes towards someone having that right that is carried out, no matter what the charge is, no matter whether they're from this country or not. That due process of law has to be afforded and awarded to everyone.
Let's talk about the jail facilities. You and I did a number of stories talking about the new Portsmouth jail. We had the now former Hampton Roads Regional Jail that the city has taken over.
Yes, correct.
So first, let me ask you, how's that going? What's the update in terms of using that facility? And I know it's a huge space.
It is. It's a huge space that can be very, very useful to the city of Portsmouth. Currently, right now, we're just housing our inmates, which is less than 200. The facility is capable of housing up to 1,300 inmates. But one of the keys for us with this facility is, 2 years ago, we were able to, the city of Portsmouth, meaning we, were able to house juveniles in the city of Chesapeake. Chesapeake canceled that agreement almost 2 years ago. So Portsmouth does not have a juvenile facility. And just to really educate the public, juveniles can't be housed along with adult inmates, the adult population. But our facility now is large enough that it can be built out to be able to house juveniles. Because juveniles, when they're housed in the areas where adults are, they can't be in view of each other, or even in sound. It can't even be in hearing distance. And this facility will work perfectly because it's large enough. It has to be a duplication of services. The juveniles will have to have their own kitchen personnel, their own health care, as well as an educational component and a recreation component. But that facility is large enough to accommodate it. And hopefully, we have a very good city manager, and that's what we're working towards. But I do want to explain that really the sheriff's office has nothing to do with the security aspect of guarding juveniles. So if that comes to form that we are able to have that facility converted, part of it, into housing juveniles, it's civilians who will monitor and care for and look after the juveniles.
So that's one way in which you kind of envision that space can be used or built out. Are there any other things that you're currently working on or hoping for this larger space at the jail?
We just entered a partnership with behavioral health, and this is huge, because the majority of inmates you have is a high percentage that come into our care that have the mental health challenges. And we have a number of individuals that are, by the courts, supposed to be sent out to a medical facility to address their mental health. Sometimes to find a bed in the state of Virginia can take days, sometimes even weeks. So with this partnership now with behavioral health, they're going to be able to provide that facility with a care facility area where, until we can really get those beds, they can be cared for at the same level as in a facility. So it's going to be a huge beneficial partnership. So the good thing about it also, until that's up and running, the partnership that we've developed with behavioral health, they can help move along those people that are ordered by the court to go to a mental health facility where we've been waiting days, sometimes weeks. We had one recently where they made a phone call and it was done within 4 hours. So just that partnership itself is a huge, huge benefit. And I think with the partnership with behavioral health coming in that facility, and if we get permission for the juvenile facility, all that space will be used. It's very usable space, and it would be able to accommodate all of that. Because the key with us, backing up to the juvenile problem, the nearest facility for us to take a juvenile now is Williamsburg, Virginia. Oftentimes, those spots are not available. So I have deputies transporting juveniles as far away as Bristol, Virginia, which is a 7-hour one-way trip. And the logistical part of that oftentimes is a nightmare. And up until 2 years ago, we weren't transporting juveniles.
Yeah, you see my face. You saw the eyebrow lift on my face. Two questions in that as you're explaining it. One, when you say transporting, are they driving? And then two, well, I guess three, why is that the case? Does it have to be a certain facility, and there aren't any facilities in between the states at that point? And then what kind of strain does that put on the sheriff's department when you're having to send out your people to transport a juvenile that far away? Yeah,
and maybe I should back up a little bit. When I first came into office, I was approached by, at that time, the chief of police and the city manager. They wanted to know, would it be possible to take over certain police functions to kind of help them out because they were understaffed. So the first thing we did almost 8 years ago now, we took over the booking and intake and warrants for the police department. Not all the warrants, but a majority of the warrants. And with the booking and the intake process, normally when a police officer will make an arrest, they would be tied up with that process for 2 to 3 hours, sometimes half, or maybe at times their whole entire shift. So with us doing that on their behalf, they're able to just bring the person that they arrest, we take care of everything, and they can go right back on the street. 5 years ago, we were approached again by the city. Can you take over the school resource officer program because of the low staffing with the police department? So we've been doing that 5 consecutive years, and actually when we were first asked to do it, it was 2 weeks prior to school starting. But we were able to get it done. We still cover every school in Portsmouth with a school resource deputy. 2 years ago, we were asked by the city, can you transport the juveniles? After the contract was canceled with Chesapeake, because up until that time, the Portsmouth police officers will go and transport the juveniles from the facility to court and then back to the facility. So to fast forward, when we agreed to take over that function to help out, that's how we ended up transporting juveniles as far away as Bristol. The other destination is in Northern Virginia. So the strain that it puts on our staff, and even though we're one of the few agencies in the area that's almost fully staffed, we have 2 openings at present, and they should be filled by the end of next week. But it's still challenging because I give you a prime example how a day may start out. And we're able, the courts are real generous with how we work with them. They know if the juvenile is in Bristol, we'll request a court time sometime in the afternoon. So the deputies will leave, 2 deputies, minimum of 2 deputies, will leave at midnight, drive to Bristol, pick up the juvenile, bring them back for court, get back in Portsmouth in time for court that afternoon. After that court session, 2 additional deputies would take that juvenile back to Bristol, Virginia. So that's 4 in transportation. And that's not outside, those are not only the transports that we're doing in the course of that day. We're also still locally transporting inmates to and from court. And if we get a court order to transport a person to a mental health facility, so any given day I may have 8 deputies on the road going to all different parts of the state of Virginia.
And all of that is a big reason why, particularly before the city took over the Hampton Roads Regional Jail, you were very vocal, very outspoken about why you guys needed more facilities,
yes.
Right? And so that kind of feeds back into where we
yes.
started with that conversation with the Hampton Roads Regional Jail. Thank you for breaking that down. I think, when you're talking about transporting juveniles, that I didn't realize it was that distance.
Yeah, and another thing that comes into play is you're taking these juveniles such a distance away. If they're under medical care, you're taking them from their medical provider, you're taking them away from their families, and you're taking them away from their legal advice, their attorneys. So it really is a logistical nightmare. And any day that I might have a deputy out on sick leave or annual leave, it really tightens up because courts still have to be covered. The jail still has to be covered. Civil processing still has to be covered because those are the core responsibilities. Jail security, court security, civil processing, those are the deputies you see throughout the neighborhoods serving legal documents on behalf of the court system. And of course, the 4th added to that was 5 years ago when we also took over the school resource officer program. Those are our core responsibilities. Well, I want to get back to your cores there as well. One more question on the jail facility. Mm-hmm. When it was the Hampton Roads Regional Jail, it served multiple cities. Yes. Would you, as sheriff, be open, and I don't know if there are conversations in the works right now, if there are other cities who still need extra beds, that they would be able to come to the Portsmouth jail, I guess the Portsmouth jail. Yeah, it is the Portsmouth jail now, yes. Is that happening, or are you open to that taking place? I am open to it, but that can be some discussion that we probably will have after we are able to really combine the juveniles issue that we have with housing and behavioral health. And I'm sure it will probably still be space left over, but it will be minimal space. Those are your priorities when it comes to the jail? We have to get that done. Okay. You said something, I want to ask this. You said right now you have 2 openings at within the Portsmouth Sheriff Department. There are a lot of other agencies that cannot say that. Yeah. Hiring is such a big question often. Right. So what do you think that your department is doing or has done differently? If you think there's something you've done differently, that you've been able
to fully staff your department just about?
Yeah. Prior to coming in office, I kind of did my homework. I knew it was 4 things that I had anticipated needed to be done right off. Number 1 on that list was increasing the pay. Number 2 was continue to expand our services to our senior citizens, our disabled and disadvantaged. The third was to take a proactive role in crime, to really take a proactive role. And of course, that 4th one was getting the jail relocated off the waterfront. But the pay was key. The pay was key. Just kind of give you a little explanation of it. The state pays the majority of the salary for our employees. Each city and county pays a supplemental funding towards their salary. Portsmouth hadn't increased that supplemental pay in over 2 decades. So I started the process when I first got in office, which was 2018. It quickly shifted between the time that the negotiations actually started to the time that it was actually cleared and we had gotten the increase in pay. It had gone through 6 different city managers. So that was one of the hang-ups. It was constant rotating of city managers. But, I had to be persistent because I know in order to keep good personnel and be able to attract good personnel, you have to have a decent wage, a decent pay. And it made a huge difference because those first few months in office, I had deputies leaving left and right. And they were excellent workers. And we had a great relationship, but I couldn't talk them out of leaving. If you could go to Chesapeake Sheriff's Office or Virginia Beach Sheriff's Office and make $15,000, $20,000 more. It was no way in the world I was going to try to hold them back to take care of their families. That's what they needed. Fast forward, a lot of those employees that left because of that are now in the applicant pool to come back. And I welcome them back with open arms, because they were excellent employees, and I was sorry they had to leave, but I understood because the pay was so low. We were the lowest paid in the Hampton Roads region, and probably in the top 10 in the state. It was that low. Where now our pay is comparable to the highest in the area. And to give you an example, Richmond, we're comparable in pay with the city of Richmond, which is a higher cost of living area.
And how many total employees under the Portsmouth Sheriff's Office, for those who don't know?
181. And that's civilian and sworn personnel.
Okay. And a part of what you do, you now have the services of school resource officers. You guys oversee,
Yes.
security at the schools in that fashion. We talked about juveniles in terms of having a place for them to be housed,
Right.
in the case that they are accused of something that
Yes.
needs it. You're also working within the schools. So much conversation around what can be done for our youth within the city. Are you currently partnering or have a plan to partner when it comes to the youth within the area and your deputies?
Oh, yeah. The great thing about this school resource deputy program is not only are those deputies a deterrent to crime during the course of the school day, but we cover all events outside of, outside of the school day, whether it's sporting or non-sporting events. So we cover all of that, anything from the PTA to STEM programs, which normally happen on Saturdays and Sundays. Deputies are deeply involved in those interactions with those students. And that's the great thing about it. We're not serving just as armed security, but as mentors and someone that those students can approach on a regular basis if they have problems at home or if they're having problems with another student in school. It's that great relationship that we have been able to develop in the school setting.
What about partnership with the police department? What's your relationship like, and do you think there are any ways in which that can improve?
Yeah, it's misinformation that's been floating off and on, especially during election time, that we don't work with the police department. And I think I just shared with you and viewers that we took over booking, warrants, and intake to assist the police department because they're short staffing. Then we took over the school resource office program because of their short staffing. Because all of this, with us helping them, is a benefit that helps the citizens of the city of Portsmouth. And of course, most recently, the one that we just finished talking about was taking over juvenile transportation. We don't do it all because the police still do some of that, but the majority falls on the sheriff's office. And to give you an example of how we work together, during the summer months when schools are closed, with the exception of a few schools open for summer school, I reassign those school resource deputies to patrol the streets along with the police department. At the start of the summer, I got with Chief Jenkins, who's really a dynamite chief, and he's done a great job, he and those officers in the city of Portsmouth, even with being understaffed. But we partner with them. I spoke with him. He had 4 or 5 areas that he had some concern about because, summer months, crime has a tendency to uptick, as well as during the holiday season. So those deputies went and patrolled those areas, not just riding around, but actually getting out of their vehicles and engaging with the citizens in those areas. So we work with them, and recently, I'm sure you remember the incident that happened in Chesapeake where the young man killed his girlfriend but then fled to Portsmouth. I got a call earlier that morning from the deputy chief saying that pretty much all their police units were tied up on that site where this person was held up. We took over the calls for this police department that morning up until about mid-afternoon. So they know they can rely on us to fill in and help when we can. But those services that we took over on their behalf that benefit the citizens of the city, we still do, and we enjoy doing because we know it's making a difference with the police department with their short staff.
We've had conversations about recidivism, and for those who don't know, that's if someone gets arrested
Yes.
or they commit a crime, it's the likelihood of them doing a crime again to get back, right?
Yeah.
So wanting to reduce that is reducing the chances of them coming back
Right.
into the system. You have talked about, wanting programs and doing programs to help against people returning. In what ways are you trying to do that now? And then do you have any plans to further achieve that?
Yeah. We've had that discussion in the past about our reentry program.
Yeah.
We started that for the first time at the sheriff's office about 7 years ago. And that program really gets into people that need to finish getting a GED. We teach computer literacy courses. We make sure they have the proper identification. We have substance abuse counselors. We have incorporated a lot of that reentry program with community groups. So we have one community group called the Man Foundation that actually comes in and present fatherhood classes and motherhood classes. And one of the things that we've tried to do at the sheriff's office is really keep families in touch and engaged. So during the course of a year, we put on 2 or 3 programs where we're able to bring inmates out of the setting or jail setting, take them to one of our other locations, and meet with their families. So, for example, we do one every Valentine's Day. We call it the father and daughter dance, but actually everyone is involved, whether it's a daughter or a son. It's an opportunity for them to sit down, engage, they play games, they take photos together, it's a meal, but that's our way of trying to keep families engaged, that they aren't strangers that once they're released. Because what we try to do is make sure that everyone that comes into our care, when they leave, they're in better shape leaving than what they were when they came to our jail. Now, we can't force everyone to participate in the reentry program, but the numbers have grown constantly over the last few years since that program started. And it really gives an opportunity to really get and understand the life of a person and the reason why they did whatever they did and was sentenced to jail. So it gives that opportunity also, because we address the mental health aspect of it also. And one of the key things for us is not only when they serve their time and they leave, not only do they leave with the proper medications they need or the identification, but one of the key things is to make sure they have somewhere to go. Because to leave and be homeless, that just creates another problem. So our reentry program has great partnerships with different organizations to help place people in temporary housing until they can get their feet on the ground if they don't have a family home to go back to.
Sheriff, what would you say is the primary issue facing the city of Portsmouth that the Portsmouth Sheriff Department can help with? And how are you either doing that, or how can you see you doing it in the future? We are a multiple facet agency. And oftentimes when I go to speak to community groups, they're surprised at everything that we do. And because we're not on Facebook a lot of times advertising what we do, but we do try to advertise the important things we do to help out our citizens in the city of Portsmouth. And one of those, of course, is what I just mentioned earlier about partnering with the police department during those critical times of year when it's the summer months and when it's the holiday season. Holiday seasons, we do patrols throughout the city of all the business districts to kind of cut down robberies, those type of things. So that benefits the safety of the citizens, and it also helps out the police department. But one of the other major things we do, we have a deep reach into the community, especially with our senior population.
We have a huge senior population in the city of Portsmouth. And a lot of those homes are widows, the only people that live in that home. They're on fixed income. So this isn't a new program with us, or with the sheriff's office, but we maintain lawn maintenance for them. The challenge has been that when I came into office, the numbers have consistently grown over the years with that request to assist these seniors and disabled and disadvantaged with a lawn care service because it's no charge. And it's the same thing, we build the handicap ramps. And the good thing about that program, we were able to use, up until the pandemic, inmates that were incarcerated on minimal type charges, failure to pay fines. It gave them an opportunity to come out, get a trade, work along with the deputies, because we have a deputy who's a master carpenter, which just works out great, and partner, learn a trade. And at the same time, we were able to work out a process on a program with the clerk's office, the Honorable Cynthia Morrison, where these inmates were able to get paid, and they could use that funding to pay off their fines. So it was a great program all the way around. It's still up and running. The previous sheriffs developed that program. It has just blown up. It's tripled the number of people that we help from the time I came into office. But we find a way to do it, and it gets done. But those programs like that, and even with the homeless, in Portsmouth prior to the pandemic, a lot of churches in the city of Portsmouth would house the homeless for 1 week at a time, and then it would rotate to another church the next week, and so on. Well, when the pandemic set in, all the churches shut down. So the homeless really had nowhere to go, and this was normally done during the course of the winter months. I just happen to know Dr. Darlene Sparks Washington, excellent heart, huge heart. She's in charge of Portsmouth Volunteers for the Homeless. So I approached her and asked about partnering together, because we have a sheriff's facility that's set up like dormitory style living. So fast forward, the homeless have been in that building for 5 years at no cost, and not only during the winter months, but 12 months a year. So we look at, when we talk about serving the citizens, we're talking about from the smallest child to our senior citizens, and in between that is the incarcerated and the homeless and those in need of food. So March, we actually started a feeding program. And this is what I really like to advertise, because there's a lot of people, not only in Portsmouth, but in the area, that are just going without food. And it kind of started for us because every holiday season, around Thanksgiving and Christmas, we would deliver freshly cooked meals at no charge to the homeless, as well as to our seniors at senior citizen complexes. And I had a conversation back in November, right at Thanksgiving time, with 2 of the seniors. They were always so happy to have that meal, and they say their only wish was that it was more frequent. So it kind of got me thinking. And then, of course, with fast forward to this year, you see a lot of the food and nutritional programs being cut. I felt there was a need for us to reach out and do something again for the community. So back in March, we started a feeding program where we prepare the food, because we have a staff at the jail that are civilians. They're the cooks. They prepare the food. We deliver those meals every Tuesday and Thursday to those people. It started out as a senior program, but to anyone that's in need of food. So our challenge moving forward is to try to now expand from 2 days a week to 5 days a week. That's what we're working on now. So that feeding program has really, really hit home. I mean, because we're hit with calls every day for that request, where people are in need of food. And
And your staff, do they deliver those meals, or people pick them up? How's it get to the people?
We deliver. We deliver those meals to those people in need.
You're going against an opponent in this race, obviously, because
yes,
right. What would you say would be the ways that you would distinguish yourself from him, and why you believe that voters should choose you over him?
Yeah, I believe in looking at a person's background, because I think a background has a lot of indicators of how you can perform in a position like the sheriff's office. I have worked everything from security at the 1996 Olympics to security at the United Nations in New York, and everything in between that, which when I was promoted to supervisor with Department of Justice, it was an easy transition, because I had done undercover assignments for my own cases and for other agents throughout the Bureau, not just in the Virginia or wherever I was stationed at that time. So it gave me that background of knowing how to supervise those type of investigations because I had done the work. And for the sheriff's office, it has been a huge benefit because, first of all, I know how to supervise people because I know at one time I was supervised. and I currently am being supervised by the citizens of Portsmouth. So for me, I think the record is the key. What I did prior to coming in the sheriff's office is hugely important. But getting into the sheriff's office and elected in 2017 to present, what have I been able to do? And I think if anybody checks that record and see what we do, because again, I always have to resort back to what our core functions are: court security, jail security, civil processing, and the school resource deputy program. That's it. But everything we do outside of that is a collateral duty. And having an excellent staff, which is why I fought so hard to get them the pay increase, is a benefit to the citizens of the city of Portsmouth because they don't mind going the extra mile to make sure. So we cover a lot. I mean, we've done a lot of good in the communities. We just don't talk about it all the time, but we partner with all of these different community organizations that are benefit to the citizens, like the Mann Foundation I meant. This summer we had a program with Giving Back to the Block, where we were able to take youth that were at risk youth. It was about 30, close to 40 of them. They partnered up with our community group that cuts the grass for the senior citizens and those that are in need. And they were able to get paid for it. And to see how that program progressed from the very first week of when we did that partnership to the end of the summer when it was time for them to go back to school, it was a 180-degree turn with their attitudes and with their desire to really, we really like this. We would like to do this again next summer to help out people that's really in need. So I think all of those things outside of those core responsibilities and reaching deep into the communities with the services we provide, because I get asked often by sheriffs in the area, outside the area, why do you do all of that? We don't really, I'm not gonna call their names. We really don't do that. I say when I'm asked that question of why, my answer is always why not. It's a stress. It's a strain on staffing. Because, again, it resorts back to what we're supposed to be doing day in and day out. But we cannot neglect the things that need to be done in the community to make it safer and to make it survivable for everyone.
Just real quick, if you were at the '96 Olympics in Atlanta,
I was.
It seems that we had crossed paths much before this. I was there too as a
really?
child at that time.
Oh.
Before, obviously.
So you were there as a child?
I was there as a child. As a child.
I had just left.
The first...
I had just left Centennial Park about an hour before that bomb went off that night because I had to get back up to the University of Georgia to cover a volleyball game for the Olympics. Yeah,
I was there, I believe, the day or the 2 days prior to that with my family. So always something that is in my mind. Yeah. Let me ask you, because we got a few more minutes here. I know in years past, again, you mentioned you have not been shy from being vocal when you feel like something has needed to change, whether it be funding or something need to be done with the new facility. Ultimately, you got the old Hampton Roads Regional Jail. That means that you have to have conversations with City Council. Yeah. How is the relationship right now between you as sheriff and City Council members and the mayor?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. And one of the other misconceptions out there is that the sheriff's office actually owned the jail. And it's been hard to get everyone to understand, even some council members, not the new recently elected ones in last November, but the facility is owned by the city, and the city is responsible for the maintenance of it. That's the key, is to get everyone on the same page to realize that we're housing people around the clock 365 days a year. It has to be constant maintenance. It has to be. If not, you're going to get issues like we had early part of the summer when the air conditioning units broke down. It's a concrete and steel encased building. It won't take very long for it to heat up. So for me, is really getting council to understand they have to be proactive, that you cannot wait for an issue to happen, whether it's the elevators breaking down or the air conditioning units. They have to be serviced on a regular basis. It's their building. They're responsible for it. And that's been the hardest and most difficult thing with me, getting council, the mayor, and city managers to understand it's your building. You're responsible for the upkeep of it.
So, if I may, what does that look like, though? I mean, because you and your staff are in the building. So, are you saying that the city needs to have a separate individual who goes in? Or are you saying they need to? What is? I don't know. Maybe I don't know if you're understanding my question.
I do.
What does that
I
look
do.
like? Because your
I
staff
do.
is in the building.
Right.
I could see why someone would think that.
Right. Yeah, our staff is in the building, and it is a person assigned to not only the jail but the courts also, because the city is responsible for the maintenance of the courts, and they're pretty good. They're really very good, but the issue has always been reaction time. You know, if the air conditioner breaks down and it's 100 degrees outside, we can't wait for 48 or 72 hours before someone starts repairing it. We should have people on a list that we can easily reach out to. If that person can't do it or that company can't do it, who's next in line? It has to be done. That's it. So that's been the biggest challenge. And, you know, not many years ago, I had to take legal action against the city when we were still in that old location. And it was for that same thing, failure to provide proper and consistent maintenance, because I worry about our employees, and I worry about the people that we're responsible for caring for that's incarcerated in our facility. So you have to be able to react quickly for no matter what it is, whether it's a plumbing issue, an air conditioning issue, an elevator issue. It has to be, because the only other business in the city that's operating around the clock like we are is the Naval Hospital and the other hospital, Maryview Hospital. That's it. But it's a lot of wear and tear on buildings that house inmates, and the maintenance needs to be constant and consistent.
I'm glad you actually brought up the legal action that took place prior to me getting here, if I'm not mistaken. But it leads to a good question. As sheriff, again, you're speaking on behalf of your staff. Is that something still to this day you feel like that was the right decision? And if you had to do it again, would you do that again if it meant speaking up for your people?
Oh, yes, definitely would do it again, because, again, not only was I concerned about my staff, but also about the people we were responsible for caring for. And I definitely would do it again. You know, and the thing about it, I had many conversations leading up to that legal action. Look, we got to get this done. And I'll give you an example. The fire suppression system. Even though the fire department had a good system to work around it not working, but the fire suppression system, as best we've been able to determine, hadn't worked maybe 10 years prior to me coming into office.
And that was the old building.
That's the old building.
Old building that you're not in anymore.
Yeah, so that's what started that legal process, because they just would not react to the urgency. And of course, the courts awarded it in our favor. But I didn't like doing it, but if I had to do it all over again, I would, because my staff is in risk, health-wise, safety-wise, and the inmates we're responsible for caring for are at risk.
Sheriff Michael Moore, running for re-election in the City of Portsmouth. Sheriff, so grateful that you came in with your time here as you're running against James Cullen for that seat, to keep your seat. Anything else that you would like for anyone who's watching this, who's going to go back and watch it, for them to know about you and the reason why you believe the people of Portsmouth should re-elect you to be sheriff?
Yeah, I think if you just talk to the average citizen in the City of Portsmouth, especially the senior citizens, you know, we have a deep impact in all the neighborhoods, not just one or two neighborhoods, but the entire community of Portsmouth. You know, one of the things we try to do as a celebration of bringing people together, every year we do a Dare Day, which brings in the kids, staff from the schools, and their parents. This year it's on October the 11th at Manor High School from 1 to 5. So to the other end of the spectrum, for 4 consecutive years, we've done our Senior Expo. The very first year we did our Senior Expo, we had probably about 150 participants. And what we would do between the 3 high schools, we will alternate each year. This year we had over 800. Last year we had probably about 650, and that was held at IC Norcom High School. We ran out of space. So this year we had to use the conference center at Rivers Casino, and it was over 800 attendees, senior citizens, that came together. You know, and it gives them an opportunity to really mingle among each other, get a free meal, play games and dance and whatever. So we try to be in the community to really celebrate everyone, from our youngest to our most senior.
And my last question that I have for you, as you're talking about those programs, what would you say at the end of this next term, let's say you are reelected in this office, that you would think would be even better if people were to reelect you? What do you think that you would be able to build upon by the time this next term would end?
I think by the time the next term would end, we would have worked out the juvenile problem.
Mm-hmm.
We would have worked out the issues with the jail, construction-wise. I think we would have worked out a huge problem, which is mental health as part of being treated while you're incarcerated. So I think, because all of those really have an impact on crime itself. Because if you constantly bring people in, we talked about earlier, you don't give them the services that they need, they return to the streets, they would do repeat offenses. So I think between having a juvenile facility in the city of Portsmouth, I think having that behavioral health aspect, with partnering with the jail and the inmates, it's just a win-win for the city. But those are the two key things that I have to get done, and will get done.
So those are the priorities. So we'll definitely watch out for those as people are going to be going in. You can vote early now, right?
Yes.
In-person early voting has already started for those who are not aware within Hampton Roads, entire state of Virginia. But again, Sheriff Michael Moore, City of Portsmouth, running for re-election.
Yes.
And we will, of course, see what happens when it comes Election Day, November 4th.
November the 4th.
What the people will decide. But as always, I enjoy talking with you. The amount of times we've been able to do reports and stories together.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for the time.
For sure.